Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into something absolutely wild. We are exploring one of the most radical, boundary-pushing concepts in modern tech and political philosophy. Literally building entirely new societies from scratch. We're talking about a blueprint that completely bypasses the usual stuff, elections, revolutions, wars, and instead pitches a peaceful, purely technological route to actual sovereignty.
Okay, let's dive into this. Can you actually start a new country from your laptop? I mean, I know it sounds like pure science fiction, right? But the source text we're looking at lays this out as a highly structured, meticulously detailed proposal. We aren't just talking about spinning up a new Discord server or startup or some new crypto token. We are talking about leveraging the internet to build a legitimate, internationally recognized nation state.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. Defining the network state. 2. The 7 steps to sovereignty. 3. History and technological truth. 4. God, state, and network. And finally, number 5, the one commandment. All right, let's jump right into section 1, defining the network state. Cloud first, land last. The author gives us a very specific definition here. Quote, a highly aligned online community with the capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition. Now think about that for a second. The text uses this really fantastic metaphor of a reverse diaspora. Normally a group of people shares a piece of land and then, for whatever reason, scatters across the globe. But here, the community forms on the internet first. They align on shared values in the cloud, and only then do they move to physically colonize land in the real world.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference. A legacy nation-state is intrinsically tied to dirt. It starts with a map of the globe, draws a line around a geographically centralized piece of land, and assigns it to a state. But a network state, it operates completely differently. It starts with the 7 billion-plus minds connected across the globe. It's cloud first, land last, and entirely geographically decentralized. To put that into perspective and ground this abstract idea, just imagine a real-time digital dashboard for a country. The text pitches a hypothetical network state with, say, 1.7 million people, generating $157 billion in annual income, with a massive, globally distributed real estate footprint. It really proves the point that with the internet, you absolutely do not need a contiguous block of land to have a massive, incredibly powerful population. Which brings us to section 2, 7 steps to sovereignty, the actual execution playbook. So how do you actually do this? Well, the playbook is broken down into 7 distinct steps. First up, you found a startup society online. Second, you organize that community into a network union. Third, you've got to build offline trust through real-world meetups, all while establishing an internal crypto economy. Fourth, the community pools funds to crowdfund physical nodes, think apartment buildings or even small towns. Fifth, you digitally connect these physical nodes into what the author calls a digital archipelago. Then, step 6, you conduct a cryptographically auditable, on-chain census to absolutely prove your population, your income, and your real estate footprint. And finally, step 7, armed with that undeniable numerical proof, you negotiate to gain full diplomatic recognition from existing governments, literally going from an internet forum straight to international legitimacy. Crazy, right?
Let's move on to section 3, history and technological truth, which is really the foundation of a new state.
So, why does a founder obsessed with the future need to care about history? Well, the text leans heavily on George Orwell's famous concept. He who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past. The author argues that legacy establishments constantly use history as opposition research. Basically, they carefully curate narratives of the past to justify their current political power. If you're going to start a new society, you have to be able to counter those established narratives.
And this brings us to a massive collision detailed in the text: political power versus technological truth. Political power relies on history written by the winners, right? It's subjective. It's easily distorted. Our source points out the author's specific claims that state entities like the CCP or legacy media institutions like the New York Times frequently distort history to maintain political power and drive specific narratives. The text contrasts this directly with technological truth. Technological truth is absolute, it's unfalsifiable, and it fundamentally relies on the unbending laws of mathematics.
So the ultimate defense against the rewriting of the past is what the author calls cryptohistory. This is cryptographically verifiable macrohistory. By using blockchain ledgers like Bitcoin, society can essentially create an indestructible, unfalsifiable log of human events. It creates a ledger of record, where facts are backed by hard, cryptographic proof, not just the subjective decrees of whoever happens to be the political winner at the time. Okay, section 4, God, state, and network, and the shift in global power.
To really understand why a network state can even exist today, we need to look at the author's theory of leviathans. These are the ultimate forces that govern human behavior. So the crucial point is how this dominant force has fundamentally shifted over time. In the 1800s, the ultimate leviathan was God. The fear of divine punishment was the primary driver of human behavior. Then, in the 1900s, as organized religion's influence kind of waned, the state became the new leviathan. Fear of government violence, police, and laws drove behavior. But now, in the 2000s, a new leviathan is rising, and it's the network. Today, cryptography, digital borders, and social consensus are increasingly becoming the absolute forces that govern what we can and cannot do.
The text argues that the network is actively overriding the state. Why is that? Well, because while the legacy state relies on physical violence and paper law, the network relies on encryption and smart contracts. And the reality is, no amount of physical state violence can solve a math problem. If your assets or your communications are secured by strong cryptography, a state simply cannot seize them without the key. It's a fundamental shift in physics. To summarize this power shift, the network is the next Leviathan. It offers cryptographic tools that limit government overreach in ways that paper legislation simply cannot guarantee. Basically, math trumps muscle. And the author firmly believes that a startup founder who pits the network against the state using the internet, remote work, and crypto stands a very real chance of winning and successfully building a brand new society. Now for our final section, Section 5, the one commandment, the moral foundation. Now, I pose this question to you. What actually unites a network state? I mean, if you're building a country from scratch, what makes people want to join and, more importantly, stay? The source material insists that a startup society needs way more than just the promise of a higher standard of living. It requires a profound, culturally uniting moral purpose. The text calls this uniting purpose the one commandment. It's basically a specific moral innovation that deeply differentiates your new society from the legacy establishment. And the author gives several really fascinating examples here. You could have a digital Sabbath society built entirely on the premise that a 24/7 internet culture is fundamentally damaging. Or how about a keto kosher state? That's a society built around the strict premise that sugar and processed carbs are literal poison. So yeah, definitely no bakeries allowed there. You could have a post-FDA society, hyper-focused on radical life extension, or even a society based entirely on traditional religious values like the Benedict option. The core takeaway here is that a successful network state absolutely must identify a specific moral deficit in the current culture and then build a highly aligned society specifically designed to fix that exact deficit. Actually, the author strongly warns that without this shared moral critique, your network state is nothing more than a glorified, soulless, gated community with a nice app. It needs a soul to survive. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for this explainer. We've explored how technology allows us to assemble in the cloud, lock our history in cryptography, and define entirely new moral communities. The source text suggests a massive paradigm shift is underway right now. So I leave you with this to reflect on. As the Leviathan of the network continues to rise, does the future actually belong to the traditional map of the globe? Or will you eventually log on and join a network state? Thanks for joining me today, and keep exploring.